Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for small business owners and entrepreneurs, where we show you how to build a successful business and to have a life too. We're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time and to get off the treadmill so we can experience a life of significance. And now, your host and the author of the #1 best-selling business book, Making Money is Killing Your Business, Chuck Blakeman.
Today I'm talking with Brandon Rains. He's an estate planning attorney. He started his own firm in 2016 and has grown it to serve hundreds of clients and a team of multiple attorneys and staff. He was a member of the 3 to 5 Club for about 7 years. Brandon's focus in estate planning is to help families pass on not only their family wealth, but also their family stories and values, helping make inheritances be blessings in loved ones' lives. Welcome, Brandon. Great to have you back.
Pleasure to be here again. Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah, we did another podcast with Brandon a few weeks ago, and it was about hiring and how we should hire very differently than the industrial age hiring practices that we still seem to cling to. So take a listen to that one. Today, we're going to talk about onboarding and mentoring and freedom mapping in the context of onboarding and mentoring. So let me just give a real quick for our listeners. They know what onboarding and mentoring kind of is. What the heck is freedom mapping? It's using the traditional idea of mapping a process, but you're using it to actually help individuals and teams figure out who is the best at what and who should be doing what. So what's the highest and best use of each team member's time and talents? And we use the map not just to map the process, but to find out who should be doing what and what they really get energized by. So we're bringing people on and we're onboarding someone, and I'll scare people and then I'll turn it over to you. The research I found when I did my third book on onboarding was this. Someone had followed people who had been onboarded, like, 1,000 people. They had watched them get hired, and then they followed them through 2 or 3 years of productivity at those jobs. And what they found was this. Not the first few days or weeks, not the first few hours, but the first few minutes that you have someone in a new position has a direct and measurable impact on not only their own productivity, but the productivity of the team they're on for the next 2 to 3 years. That's how important onboarding is. And we usually just bring somebody on and throw them at a desk and say, have at it. We've got it so wrong. It is so important to welcome new people into our family and give them the beliefs and the culture and all that fun stuff. So how has that worked for you? How have you experienced the onboarding, just as a general overview, as you've brought people on? How's that worked for you?
Well, if you're going to ask me how it's gone, I would say you need to talk to my stakeholders, not me, and ask
Sure.
them how it's going. But what I would say is with that idea of freedom mapping, right? So there's kind of 3, at least in my, you've taught this too, is there's kind of 3 levels that make up freedom mapping, right? So there's the macro level, the super high level. Yeah. Here's the context of who's doing what, right?
Yeah,
and
just,
I think
just a map, like a map of the entire business on one side of one piece of paper in 15 steps.
Yeah. And I think that is so valuable because that and the micro map, which is kind of like the middle tier, right? More in depth, but not necessarily the day-to-day.
Yeah, so just to give context for my listeners, a macro map would be a map of your entire business, how your customer experiences you from the minute they find you in an ad or a marketing piece until they sunset and they never use you again. All of that. What is that 10 or 12 or 15 steps? And then we would pull out of that and do micro maps of maybe like the sales part of that macro map, the operations part of that macro map, the marketing part, the administration part, the accounting part. There would be micro maps around each one of those organizational processes. So keep going. I just wanted to give that context.
Yeah, no, that's great. And those are, for me, those are more visual representations.
Yeah.
Right? And then the process map is down in the very bottom. These are, very, very granular tasks and how to do it.
Yeah, the process descriptions are down at the bottom.
Process descriptions and all that stuff, right? And for me, from an onboarding perspective, that is so valuable because people want to know where they fit in, right? Yes. Even if and I'd learned this once. I hired 4 people. I went from just me to hiring 4 people in like a year and a half at the beginning of COVID. So for me, like that's a lot of growth.
Yeah.
And after a while, there was a comment made or a conversation in a weekly team meeting where people were like, I'd actually like to know how what I do fits in with like what everyone else is doing. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So people want to know not just if
Yes.
they're doing a good job, not just what their job is, but
Yeah.
if they're finding meaning in the work that they're doing, they want to find that meaning. And part of that is, how do I fit? Like, okay, these are my 5 tasks. How does that fit in with the 20 other tasks, right? Am I all at the front? Am I all at the end? Am I kind of interspersed? And they like to know that because then they get a sense of community. They respect each other already, but it's like, oh, okay, like I have even more reason to respect the work that you're doing because what I'm doing is in here on step 5 impacts what you can do in step 6 because we're interrelated. And then you're on step 18, you're impacting what I can be doing on step 20 because we're interrelated there. And so it creates a sense of and a reality of community and interdependence, right? Is the term from that I learned from you all.
Yeah.
We're all interdependent, we're all interconnected. And so helping them know the visualness of all of that can be so important. But then also for me, from an onboarding perspective and initial training perspective, really what it's for me is, 3 to 5 you kind of talk about the macro, the micro, and the process mapping. And really the process mapping, that first step is find the things that are just broken, that aren't working or can easily break, and process map those first.
Yeah.
Now, I am a maximizer, which means if you tell me to do 10 push-ups, if I can actually get myself to do it, I'm going to do 11.
Uh-huh.
I've process mapped everything, including our onboarding and our training. And so because I'm a big believer in consistency and not having to reinvent the wheel every single stinking time.
Yeah.
And so we actually have a step-by-step process for helping people get onboarded. And that goes all the way from back to our hiring podcast when we talk about hiring for culture, hiring for personality fit, and all that stuff. We use the onboarding process. The first couple videos is just explaining how do you go through the process.
Yeah.
But then when we really get in the meat and potatoes, it's once again, here are our values, here's our culture, here's what we care about. And so we're reminding them continually what that looks like. And some of that is a mix of live one-to-one conversations with the members of their team. Some of that is we have a bunch of recorded videos. We run pretty hard. We're a high volume, high touch law firm. And so our time to do a true live one-to-one, and you can poke holes in this if you want to, Chuck, and that's okay. But we do a lot of recorded videos. It's not written on,
Brilliant.
It's not quite live, but it's just me pre-recording a video, and this is what I want to be talking to you about. And that's it. Now, then you've watched this video, go to the next one. And they check that task is complete. And the next one automatically pops up with their next video. And they do a one-to-one just like this with all their team members in that first week. They watch the first week they should be watching all the onboarding videos. And then they watch those videos a second time over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks. Because you're drinking from a fire hose, you're not going to remember everything. And so it's like, hey, take a little bit more time, 1 or 2 a day, and watch it again for the next little bit. And so that's what that looks like with onboarding. And then with training, right? Because they don't actually know how to do their job yet. The first week for us is legitimately just onboarding. We're not asking them to step in and do anything yet.
Yeah.
When they are stepping in, they have their tasks, but in the description of every single task is a video showing them how to do it. And then there's a program that we use for screen capture, which is basically screenshots, and you can put in some narrative text explaining how to do stuff. Every single task has both a video and the screen capture program. And so the idea is, I don't know that I see this happening very much, but the idea is you don't have to go ask somebody else how to do your job because they're doing their own job. Or if you're replacing somebody, they're not there to ask. How do we help you be self-sufficient quickly?
Yes, and you're creating consistency. We've talked about this many times. We think our number one asset might be people or our knowledge or the market or our finance. The number one asset in every business is trust. And the number one practice to get trust is consistency. And so when you train everyone the same way coming in, you're going to have a consistent understanding of your beliefs, your culture, your processes. Everybody's going to be on the same page. And more importantly, when you do this with a macro map, you show everybody how they fit in with everybody else. And now you're also starting on day one to create the message, we live in community. This is not the Dilbert Society where somebody throws a piece of paper over a wall at you, you stamp it and throw it over the next wall. You don't have any idea where it came from, you don't know where it's going, and you don't care. No, it doesn't work that way. I want to bring up real quickly for people who are watching on video on YouTube. Here's just a real quick flash of an example of an onboarding map that we use for ourselves. And there's the beginnings of training in this. And so we show the map and we show who in our company is responsible for what different pieces of that onboarding with the new person coming on. There's mentoring and there's training that starts from day one and goes on from there. And then I'll actually bring up just to show people real quickly, again, if they're seeing it this way, visuals really help. These are the three levels that you talked about. A macro map, there's one of those in every business. It's the overview of the entire business. And here's an example of a company I did this for a company that was about, I think at the time they were a $20 million company. And this is a map of their entire company's process, the experience their customer has from the beginning of the process to the end of the process. And I don't know, it's like 15 or 18 steps for a $20 million company. That's their macro map. And then we have a micro map, which is the second piece of that. And this is an example of one of their micro maps. So here's their macro map. It's this big overview that really doesn't show you anything but the big story. And then here's one micro map of how they order materials. They made machines that cost like $150,000, $200,000 in just materials. And the machines are $1 million+. And so this is a very simple 10 or 12 step process that shows their entire ordering process on one side of one piece of paper. And then below this, inside these documents, you could find what we call process descriptions. And you could click on any one of these boxes here, and behind it lives as much paper and as much documentation as you want. You can go crazy in detail behind these blocks. But we learned by pictures and stories, and this is a picture that tells a story. Right out of the gate, somebody understands A, where they fit into the big process, and then B, what their specific job is. So I just wanted to give people that as a context.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, and in my experience too, it's all of that. And then on top of that is our program that we use to manage tasks. It calls it sequences, which is basically a chain of tasks that are connected. When you mark one as complete, you have the next one just pops up, right? And so mapping is awesome. Mapping is great. We also want to have that same spirit, this is my opinion, that same spirit infuse the day-to-day as well.
Yes.
And so by having these chains of tasks, these sequences, I have a meeting with a client, I can assign these sequences to the correct people, and they're the same tasks every single time with the training videos and the training screen captures. All they have to do is just copy paste the URL to see how they're doing it. And so for me, that's that spirit of freedom mapping, which the idea is as you map out the systems and the processes, you're creating freedom ultimately for everybody. And so and by creating the consistency, the templates, this is how we do things. Sometimes you might say, hey, if there's a decision, there's two different ways things can go. If it were me, I was like, okay, create two sequences. And then when that decision comes, you've got the consistency.
Yes.
We don't waste time. Maybe this is a great example. I spend 0 seconds every single day figuring out what the next step is. What am I supposed to be doing today? Because I have my daily task list feeds from all of these sequences and tasks from all the different clients that we're engaging with. They have a due date. It's assigned. So it pops up on my due date. I know my stuff a little too well, but if I didn't know how to do something, I can watch a video or I can watch the screen capture
It's a
right?
good reminder.
I spend 0 seconds in every single day. It was like, what am I supposed to do today? I don't remember. That decision has been made for me over the previous 2 to 6 weeks as I'm just simply implementing on a task by task, day-to-day basis. And all of that is an outgrowth of the macro mapping, the micro mapping, and all that stuff from freedom mapping. It starts
Yeah.
there, and then it can infuse and inform every single level of action within the firm. And so we are so incredibly efficient because the things that can be made a template are a template and consistent, which actually
Yeah.
gives us more time to either help more people or spend more time on individual people who are exceptions because we're so efficient with everything.
And so when somebody refers somebody to you, they end up getting the same experience. Person A says, I'd love for you to talk to Brandon Rains' law firm because I had this experience. And the next person has the same experience. And so many companies, it's a crapshoot. We're winging it, and their experience could be completely different.
Yep.
I want to handle 3 objections that come to mind that I think our listeners could have. I'll handle number 1, and then you can handle number 2. Number 1 is, this sounds way too complicated and I mean, he's got layers and layers of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, the answer to that is you didn't have that either. And I'm pretty sure the answer to that is you did the same thing I'm going to say. How do you eat an elephant? And the answer is 1 bite at a time. So did you create all of this before you actually went live with any of it? I'm guessing you probably created 1 map.
Yeah.
And it was bad and it got better. And then you created another map and then you put another layer on it. So this is stuff that happens over a few years, and it's way better than what we didn't have before the minute we start. So do it. Give yourself 30 minutes to do your entire macro map of your entire company. I guarantee you, most companies can actually get it done. They put a clock on it. They can figure out what are the 15 steps that have to do with our map from the beginning to the end. The second problem that I think people have with this is that I don't have time, even if I can eat the elephant 1 bite at a time. I don't have time to do this. So how did you do this? How do you respond to, hey, I'm too busy hiring to put together a mentoring process?
Yeah, I think there's 2 thoughts. One, I was lucky enough that when I created this, I had the time because my firm was so new. I wasn't swamped like I am now, or a lot of your other listeners are. I think there's 2 parts to that answer. One is if you don't feel like you have 30 minutes, like you just mentioned, Chuck, what I always tell people is open up a brand new Word document and just every single time you do a new task, just type in the name of the task in that Word document and just put it relative to where it is, right? You don't have to take 30 minutes or 2 hours out of your day to think of it all at once. You're going to miss stuff. I know I miss stuff when I try to do that. Just keep a little task journal and say, this is the task I'm doing. This is the name. And then where is it happening in relation to all the other stuff for other people that I just did? And within a couple days, maybe, with no extra time other than the 5 seconds to put in the name of the task in the Word document, you have your first map done. That's it.
And I want to add to that, it is that simple. It's not easy necessarily, but it is that simple. And I want to add, again, to give people some measure of you can get there. You don't have to be there. I don't think I've ever created a single process or a single freedom map that was right the first time.
Oh, yeah.
How did I find out it was right? Or how did I find out how to make it better? I did it. I wrote it out as best I could, and then we did it, and we found the flaws, and then we did it again. We found a few more. And so planning, the old adage we use all the time is planning doesn't create movement. Movement actually creates the plan. Get as good as you can, know that it's not perfect, and then implement it. And after you do it, that's how you'll figure out how to make it perfect. And then do another one badly and figure out how to make that one work. All right, so the third thing that I want to handle here is, but okay, I've done this before. I wrote some really great processes, and they ended up on my shelf with my shelf help books to help my shelf look good. And it was a worthless exercise. And I agree. And Drucker said this as well, that a process that is not managed is no process at all. Actually, it was Deming that said that. A process that is not managed is no process at all. So yeah, we can make a cute little map and throw it on our shelf and never look at it again. How do we keep these things alive?
Yep. I think there's a couple things. One is just being intentional about keeping it alive, right? We all
Yep.
have agency. It's a choice, right? That's number one. Number two is going to actually be my part two of my answer to your second question, which is if you have staff and you're the only person who's creating and maintaining the process map, you're doing it wrong,
Yeah.
right? You should have all of the members of your team involved
Yes.
in the process of creating this freedom map and maintaining it. You shouldn't be the only one. You might be providing accountability to help people maintain their portion of it, but you should not be the only one maintaining it. That's number two. And then I think the third one, this is going to be me, is if it's on the shelf, that means it's disconnected from your day-to-day reality.
Yes.
And that's why, again, to use my term, we have this chain of tasks, these sequences, and use any program, they'll use their own different verbiage. But if it doesn't tie back to the practical day-to-day, what am I doing today? And there's some form of task management. I'm a big fan of using software for that. Then you're not actually living it out because you've accidentally turned your map into this pie in the sky thing that has no real foundation, that has no practical influence or impact in your day-to-day. You need to ultimately have those maps tying to day-to-day tasks, and you need somewhere to manage those day-to-day tasks. And as you create that all of that, you know that your tasks are tied back to the freedom mapping because you've created them and cross-referenced and just made sure that they're speaking to each other. If you have tasks that aren't tied to your freedom mapping, then you're in the same position. Something's got
the map's broken. Got to fix it.
But you go from this 15-step to all of these different actual, like this 15-step visualization down to the day-to-day task management.
Step one, step two.
And that way you know that all of those things are interconnected. That's, to me, that's
and that's brilliant because it really is. Any good strategy ends up in telling you need to make 3 phone calls today. It ends up very tactical. Otherwise, it's not strategy. It's just pie in the sky. And that's the problem with most business plans is they don't end up telling you to make 3 phone calls today. Strategic plans should end up there. What do we need to do this year? Therefore, we need to make 3 phone calls to these people today. The same thing with mapping. If your mapping isn't telling you exactly what to do every day, then it's not effective. And I've learned for myself, again, this is just me, what we do that helps keep them alive along with that stuff is we assign somebody else, not me. Every map is owned by somebody else in the company. So they're not owned by me. And the owners of the maps get together and they decide a rotation for bringing maps to our leadership meetings. And we do 1 map at the beginning, not at the end, because we'll rush through it. And it usually takes 3 to 5 minutes right near the beginning of our meetings. We will pull out, somebody knows whose map is up. There might be 8 maps that we rotate through on a regular basis. And there's other maps, but we don't put them in the rotation. They're not broken. They're not a problem. And so once every 8 weeks, we get every map looked at. And the leader of that map asks 2 questions. First question is, we have the result on the map. So we show, here's the result we want. It's usually a measurable result. The first question is this still the result we want from this process? Yes or no? Everybody looks at it and says yes or no. Then we have a little discussion. We change the result. Usually it's yes, this is the result we want. Then we go on to question number 2. If that's the result we still want from this process, is this still the process that will get us that result? Yeah. And we look and we just put it up on the screen. Everybody looks at it. And we ask people to actually run through the process really fast, just to slow us down and say, okay, step 1 is this, step 2 is that, rather than just looking at the map. And that'll take a minute or 2 to go through 10 or 15 steps. And people will say, yep, that is the process. Or they'll say, you know what? In the last few weeks, we've actually been doing something in between steps 12 and 13 that isn't on the map. Or, we don't do step 13 anymore. We should just delete that from the map. That's the only ways that I know how to keep this stuff relevant, is to keep rotating it through. And it gives the message, to your point, that this following a process is really important. It is not an exercise to help our shelves look good. Yep. So I love combining, giving that suggestion and giving all kinds of suggestions to our listeners for them to grab onto something that will keep this stuff alive for them. All right. So again, we just scratched the surface, but I want to go back for a second. I want to show these maps to end with, again, to just imprint on people the importance of this stuff. What if you had this is a macro map of a business, and this is a micro map pulled off of that macro map of just a little piece of that business. The point of this whole time was to show how we can use maps to help with onboarding. Think of this, even if you're not on YouTube, if you're just envisioning bringing somebody on, and one of the first things you do after you talk about your culture and your beliefs and where the bathroom is and who pays you, on that same very first day, you say, okay, let me show you a map of our entire business and how you fit into it. Your color is orange. And so the orange boxes on the macro map are how you fit in with everybody else who works here. You could go through that in 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 minutes. And this person, it shortens by months in some cases how they understand how they fit in with the rest of the world around them. And you're giving them that in the first few minutes. And they're immediately seeing that they live in community. They are not in a Dilbert society. And then you ask them any questions they have about that, and then you show them their secondary map or their micro map. And this person might be the person who is in purchasing. And their job is to order materials. And you show them their micro map. And that's another maybe 5 or 10 or 15 minutes of going through that. They don't understand the whole thing to begin with, but think of how that shortens the process. I've worked for 2 people in my life, and in one of them, they actually told me it's going to take you 2 years to figure out what we do. They said that, yeah, we tell everybody that when they come in. It did take me about 8 months. But then I put together a macro map of their entire organization once I figured it out. And it was 6 boxes. And ever since then, they've given that to people when they come in. And instead of telling them it's going to take them 2 months or 2 years to figure this out, here it is. So imagine being able to do that. And so do you have any stories of people that you've kind of shortened that process with where they say, oh, the last time I couldn't figure it out. Oh, now I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think kind of the thought was that I was thinking about as you were talking is the cost and the time and financial cost of hiring somebody new.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
And developing this type of process of showing people the freedom mapping during the onboarding process, but also freedom mapping the onboarding process
Yes.
will drastically decrease that time and financial cost, get them up to speed faster, get them integrated into their team faster, helping them learn how to live out the values and the culture and all those different things that you want them to be living out. You'll see a drastic improvement in the speed of all of those things.
Yeah, and we can circle back to where we started, that when we onboard people correctly, you can measure that increased productivity for a few years to come, not only with them, but freakishly with their entire team, because you onboarded them correctly. So we can't afford not to do this. And we should show them the map, have them help us. It's fun when I've done this with people, I show them, here's the 11-step process for onboarding, and they kind of help me go through it. And they work with me through the whole process. So all right, we've just scratched the surface. Onboarding is incredibly important. It's something that's completely ignored in corporate America in some ways. So I'm glad we touched on that. This could be a very big video or audio for people to hearken back to on a regular basis. How can people get a hold of you, Brandon, to either learn more about your services as a state attorney, or just to talk with you about, hey, how did you map and how do you onboard people? Because it's a lonely world out there. Let's get business owners together.
Yeah, I really enjoy talking about this stuff. So the best way is via email. So Brandon, Brandon @Rains, RAINS -law.com. That's best way to do it. And I'll respond really quick and happy to help in any way I can.
Brilliant. All right. Well, let's change the way we onboard people and watch how much more people have fun at work and how much more productive they are. Thanks, Brandon. This was great. Love talking to you. Love that you actually apply this stuff and the rubber meets the road with your company, and it shows.
Yep. No, thanks, Chuck. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Have a great one.
Yep.
That wraps up another episode of the Get Off the Treadmill podcast. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and hit the like button to ensure you are receiving the latest tools you need to grow your business and to get off the treadmill. If you want more information on the 3 to 5 Club, the Crankset Group, or to book Chuck as a business advisor, speaker, or workshop leader, you can contact us at grow@cranksetgroup.com. Until next time, have a great week.